I'm Roz Barnes Fowler, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to today's afternoon session, Connecting with Students. During yesterday morning's Student Voices panel, we heard how important it is for our students to connect and to have a sense of being visible to their institutions. We also learned how hard it still is to cut through all that clamors for our students' attention to get the messages from us that we need them to hear. And even before the pandemic, connecting with students was a priority as well as a challenge for us. Of course, how we connect to students vary depending on your institution, the student, the time of the year, and like our student panelists reminded us yesterday, the platform being used. But no matter what, we can all agree that making connections early and reinforcing those connections is really an important part of supporting successful transitions to and through college. Of course, once the pandemic forced us to shift to remote instruction and service delivery, connecting and sometimes reconnecting to students became even more critical as a part of our efforts. In the spring, I want to commend every institution across the state because you guys did an amazing job of getting students back online by reaching out to them, following up with them, solving some of their problems, and ensuring that students were able to continue to stay on track with their courses. But even more critical now in that effort was our desire to ensure that students were able to navigate all of the systems that we have in place to support and bolster their academic experiences. And so today we're going to showcase some ways that institutions have connected with their students and met their needs over this past year. Throughout the presentations, I remind you, you can feel free to place your questions in the chat box. And I'm going to do my best to make sure the panelists are responding to some of your questions and to keep the session going. As you know, this is being broadcast live through Facebook. So your colleagues that any and all of the sessions that we have, you are still able to go back and look at those sessions and even to look back at this one. Now it's my pleasure to introduce these colleagues to you. First, we'll hear from our colleagues at Valdosta State University, Rodney Carr, who is the Vice President of Student Success, and Rob Friedhoff, who is the Executive Director of Advising and Student Transitions. And then we will definitely hear from our colleagues at Atlanta Metropolitan State College, Jay Wyatt, apologies, Executive Director of Admissions and Student Life, and Mita Rollins, Director of Faculty and Administrative Services. But I'll be back once these two sessions are done. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to about day 300 and probably 18 of endless Zoom meetings is what it feels like. And you can see Rob and I on the screen right there in front of you. I'm the one with the huge forehead over there on the right-hand side of the screen. But Roz, thank you so much for such a warm introduction and bringing this to a good light. And yesterday's meetings with our SGA presidents was truly very enlightening as we listen to those students say how you communicate to us is just as important as what we are communicating to them. We all love to use text messages. We do it too. Rob and his team do it a lot. One of the things we heard yesterday, and we even talked about shortly after that, was we've got to be careful how many text messages we are sending out. That came across very clearly. And so we're already looking at, well, what can we do next and how do we end up doing that? So I wanted to tell you very quickly thank you for letting us share how we tried to connect our students back in the pandemic of when all of this started. So back in March of 2020, almost right at a year ago, well, actually it was right about a year ago when we started being told that we were about to go to 100% online. And for those of you that are in faculty, you know what a huge challenge that was going to be, as you were saying, now I've got to transition my class to online. How am I going to do that? And that's a huge challenge in and among itself. For those of you that are in enrollment management, we all curled up in the fetal position in a corner of a room somewhere, sucking our thumb in absolute fear of what was about to happen in enrollment. My good friend Scott Lingrell is famous for saying, those of us in enrollment management are the biggest fundraisers at every institution. Whether your advancement people want to believe that or not, we truly are the biggest fundraisers for the institution. And when you start looking at, we're about to send our entire population online, it's a little bit of a panic that is overwhelming to us. Now, granted, I might have been the only one sitting in the corner curled up in the fetal position, in a state of panic. But as Rob and I began to walk around our campus, we do spend a lot of time going around our campus. We spend a lot of time going over to the Palms dining area and eating with around our students and listening to them. As we were walking down the sidewalk you see right here in front of you, we heard a lot of concerns from our students about it's a global pandemic, and they were fearful of that. I'm going home. Some were fearful for that. Some were fearful about how am I going to pack up everything to my residence hall and get out of here. But the thing that we heard the most as we walked around was, I'm in a state of panic about what it's going to be to learn online. I don't know if I can do it. I'd rather be face to face. How am I going to interact with my professors? What's going to happen to my grades? All of those kinds of things. And so as we began to listen to all of that, we kind of got together into a room and we said, listening to what our students are saying, we're the experts on the field. How are we going to respond to what they're saying to us? And so we started to throw out some ideas. How can we connect to them? How many are going to be out in a rural area? I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. They don't even have internet access. What do we do about that? Some don't have laptops. A lot use our library, and that's the only access to technology that they have. What do we do that? How are we going to figure that out? And then we started to talk about some ideas of how can we do that and get connected to them. And the idea of a concierge came up, that one person that you go to that knows how to get you connected to everything. They may not have the absolute answer and they may not have the ability to do that, but instead they know how to get you in touch with the right person. And I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan. And so I was like, we need somebody that's going to be their person, their go-to person that they can go to. And so we developed this idea about the concierge coach, and we panicked a little bit and said, I wonder how many students this is going to involve. And it ended up being a little over 6,600 students. And now how many folks are we going to have to connect to 6,600 students? And so we put a call out to our university to ask for volunteers. And I got to be honest with you, I was absolutely overwhelmed at the response that we received back. We ended up with just shy of 300 volunteers, 294 volunteers, everybody from a football assistant coach all the way up to the president himself had volunteered to be these concierge coaches. And so now we're going, all right, we got 6,600 students. We got 300 people that are willing to reach out there and get in touch with them. But they don't know what to do when they reach out and they get in touch with them. And so that's kind of where Rob and his team came in, and we were sitting around, and Rob's not necessarily lucky enough to have a great boss like some of you are out there. His boss is kind of mean and sets some crazy aggressive timelines. And so I said, well, if we're going to do this, we got to get it flipped around pretty quick. So can you guys develop this training course in about 72 hours and get all 300 of them trained so that we can start calling our students? And thank goodness, Rob said absolutely. So you see what spring turned into there, about 300 coaches, 6,600 students, 13,000 notes were added into our portal that we've developed on our own. It's a success portal. And so those notes are being added in there where Rob's team can see that at home, faculty can see that at home, and they know all the notes that were going in there. And those notes are anywhere from everything is going great, or this student needs a laptop, this student needs a MiFi, those kinds of things. And then as we continue through the summer, you see there we had fewer coaches, but we also had fewer students to do that were also 100% online. And then you saw a little over 3,000 notes. And if I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere around 17 or 18,000 notes that we got into that these coaches have made. So the important part of the work really had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with Rob and his team. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Friedhoff, and he can take you through how we did all this and the kind of the how-to part of that.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here as well. It's a great time to kind of reflect back on what was a little bit crazy at the onset. And when Dr. Carr said 72 hours, I think it was closer to 72 minutes was about what he said it needed to be done in. And I'll tell you, it was a tremendous undertaking, but we were also very fortunate to have some systems that were already in place that we were able to tap into. And I do want to stay on this coaching focus slide. But before I do that, I'm going to give two quick shout outs. One, Melissa, our wonderful SGA president, is on and watching. Thank you for teasing yesterday about this in the SGA president meeting. about concierge coaching at VSU. I'm sure a few people popped in because of that shout out. And then Dr. Noviello, hello. We miss you down here at VSU. All right, back into what we're doing. So spring 2020, one of the decisions we had to make was who was it that we were going to help? So not only what were we going to do, but how were we actually going to do it? And some of that was determining who needed resources, who didn't need resources. And so those 6,600 undergrad students were all students who had been on campus. And now, because of the pandemic, we're moving to fully online. So we didn't necessarily put in support for current fully online students, just an FYI there. Then in the summertime, what happened is we had some more folks going back to doing regular duties and full-time duties on campus. So even though we had 215 coaches in the summer, we had fewer numbers of students that each coach could serve, if that makes sense, because the amount of hours they had available within their day to do the coaching dropped a little bit. And so we decided to do a focus on all of our online students that were in good standing, knowing that our advising teams would be handling those students that were in probation, continued probation, suspension, that kind of thing. And then as we rolled into fall 2020, you can see that the amount of concierge coaching our coaches dropped pretty dramatically as we got back to a little bit more normal down here at VSU. And so what we did was focus on 424 students who, had it not been for the pandemic, would have been on our campus. And so that's basically how we rolled it out. So when he and I were sitting in the president's boardroom, I don't know if it was a Wednesday night, a Sunday night, I lost track of time during that season, but we were sitting down there kind of thinking through this. One of the first things that we realized we needed to do was provide some opportunities for these concierge coaches to do some learning. And what we did was tap into our employee organizational development area. We have a fantastic colleague over there, Ashley Cooper, and her team do phenomenal work. And we basically went with them and said, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. And we could use some help inside of Blazeview to get modules set up and to make sure that when we get these 300 coaches on board, that there's something for them to go and see and learn and kind of work through. And so you can see a screenshot right now of inside of that course. Pretty simple, straightforward. I think it's in every online course you have, that Start Here folder. And I'll tell you, Dr. Carr and I definitely over the weekend, it was a Saturday or Sunday, went across campus and just shot a couple of quick videos to let our coaches know what was the goal of this coaching program. And so we picked a couple of different spaces on campus and really kind of talked to them about the importance of making the connection. And Dr. Carr utilized his example of Grey's Anatomy. I'm more of a Shawshank Redemption, Morgan Freeman, get the connection person. I haven't watched Grey's Anatomy, to which he's disappointed in, but that's okay. He'll get over it, I think. And then Ashley Cooper is fantastic on the customer service side, right? Part of this is we knew that we were going to have an opportunity to meet with students, with people that they had never heard from. And so leading with strong customer service was important. And then we had quite a few of our coaches that were a little bit nervous about, I have no idea what to say, what to do, what's that going to look like. And so we actually created scripts for them to follow, whether they're making a phone call, whether they're sending a text, if they wanted to do just an email introduction. And so we provided all of that information for them here in this coaching site. As an FYI, and just a little shout out to the appreciative education framework, we really did infuse appreciative education as our framework for outreach. It's something that I do at the national level. And so it was a decision we made to really start with disarming our students. And actually, it was not just the students, it was the parents, because sometimes we were calling and we were getting parents on the line. And so this course, I think, really allowed us to get started in a position of strength. And what we did was, once we had those 300 coaches identified, we actually had 1 hour training sessions where we kind of talked again about the concept of what coaching was going to look like, and then pointed them in and walked them through this online course so everybody was comfortable on how it rolled forward. We were fortunate, and this is what I was referring to before, where we already had some systems in place that allowed us to get going quickly. And so we have a homegrown student success portal. And basically what we did was create a spot inside of our success portal for the coaches. And so if you see on the screen here, you as a coach could come into the coaching portal. The students that are assigned to you would show up in this space. You'd be able to see their name, student ID, email addresses. If they were an athlete, we had that in there. We knew who their advisor was, what the advisor email was. We had a couple of different ways to contact them. And truly, our IT team was fantastic with this. I think they turned in at about 48 hours, again, because we already had a little bit of a system that was set up and ready to go forward. And this allowed the coaches to have the exact roster of students assigned to them in front of them at every point along the way. What was nice too, I've got to move that for a second. What we talked a lot about, especially as we got started, was a risk level that the coach could set for a student. That was one of the biggest things they kept asking us. Well, how do I know how often to reach out? How do I know if I should reach out every day, every week, every month, or what does it look like? So we built in the flag level into this, which is under risk, high, medium, and low. And so that way a coach could go in there and kind of remember, all right, hey, this was somebody that was a high risk. And what that may have meant was you called them and they told you that they were in a complete and utter state of panic. They weren't really sure how they were going to take the next step forward. They're thinking about dropping all their courses and everything is really difficult. They have no access to technology. Well, that's a high risk level student. They know then they can come back 24, 48 hours and touch base again, versus maybe that person that you call out to and you say, hey, we're just checking in. We're part of the concierge coaching team here at VSU. We just want to make sure that you have what you need to be successful as we make this transition. And that student says, you know what, I'm in great shape. Everything's good. I've got a laptop. I'm sitting at home with my parents' internet. I'm good to go. I'm comfortable in the online environment. I've got support systems, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's somebody who then is on the lower level of a risk category, at least at that point. And so those coaches were able to kind of make some decisions and say, all right, this is the group that I'm going to focus in on. This is the group that I'm going to go ahead and get back with maybe in 2 weeks. Because I think one of the things we learned is even that person who felt like they were in really good shape when we made that first outreach, if you actually got a hold of them 2 weeks later, they may have switched to a high level flag alert. And I think that just helped our concierge coaches kind of figure out who to focus in on at what points and times. You can also see that there's notes or a notes column that's in here. And so they could go in and create notes. They could go in and see if notes existed. So if they had talked with somebody and they needed a refresher, they could go in there and see what was happening and making sure that all of the information that they had was kind of current. So they knew they were talking to the right student, so to speak. The other nice part of this, again, because it was already in our student success system, is that when concierge coaches input notes, our advising team was able to see those notes when they were going in and viewing a student record. And so that note from the coach pulled directly into our system, and it was at the disposal for the advising teams as well, which made it quite handy. From an admin perspective, we also had the ability then to pull any coach at any point in time, see if they were inputting notes, see if they were having any concerns or questions, or who had what student. We could run a couple of various reports out of it and get the information we needed. And so that was helpful for us. I will tell you at this point when we launched it, I think it was about a solid 3 to 4 days of my life that really went to supporting our coaches as they got comfortable with kind of navigating this space and reaching out to students. And it was interesting because one of the biggest concerns that they had at the beginning was, is anybody going to want to talk to me? Or are they just going to assume I'm a telemarketer or whatever it's going to be? And there was a lot of concern around that. And then those first round of communications went out, and all of a sudden back in my inbox was like, oh my God, they're like thrilled that we called and they're asking me all these questions. What do I do? And then what happened was we had spaces inside that BlazeView course where they could put questions or concerns, and then our employee development team or myself could go in there and answer the concerns in real time as they were happening, and keeping everybody kind of abreast of what was going on as we went through that experience. In terms of the lessons learned, I kind of hit that first one already, which is that initial fear. Everybody wanted to help, but there absolutely was that concern of, what is this actually going to look like when we roll it out? Are people going to be receptive? And I can't tell you how often I heard back from our professional teams that were reaching out of how thankful our students and our parents were that there was one more connection point at this point in time to get a student reconnected to a resource. And like many of the campuses, I'm sure one of the first things that you all dealt with was what we dealt with, which was a technology access component. So laptops and Wi-Fi devices and all of that. And we heard a ton of those issues through our concierge coaches. We were able to get them connected to New Media Center and get laptops, iPads, MiFis, all that stuff out to them so they could continue learning. The other piece here was, thankfully for us, we're a smaller campus in terms of how we operate. We know one another. We get along well with one another. And for us to roll this in the quick timeline that we did, our relationship with employee development and e-learning was critical, because if Dr. Carr and I had to do this from the president's boardroom, it would have taken a little more than 72 hours. But with the help of some key campus constituents, we really were able to take their expertise, kind of cast a vision, and have everybody come around it and take care of it. And then again, that technology component, I showed you kind of the backside of what we were using. It was very helpful to keep our coaches organized, and then also for us to be able to determine what notes and information were in the system. And then again, that those notes that concierge coach had put in were viewable and available to our advising teams that were doing a tremendous amount of outreach at the same time. Dr. Carr, you want to hit the bottom three, the last three, or you want me to keep going?
I can. So
we'll let you hit those.
The targeting of the student populations actually helped us to reduce it down to those, and we didn't keep all 6,600 on that list either. Some of them were rocking right along and doing very steady. So those that were medium to high risk, we really started to hone in on and reach out to those even more. So we really were able to target that, and that helped get, as we came back to campus and some of the jobs were back here and people were getting busy again, it also allowed those concierge coaches just to kind of stay connected with the students. And the one thing we did find is they wanted to stay connected the entire time. It didn't matter if we told some, we're not going to need you this summer. Well, can I still call them? Can I still connect to them? Can I still see if they're coming back fall? And which was great. It was another surprise to us that we really enjoyed. Excuse me, that we really enjoyed. And quick connections during rapid change to our students, it was an absolute life changer. Melissa Wolf, that's on here watching now, she talked about it in her presentation. She talked about how she really needed that concierge coach to reach out to her and kind of give her a touch back to the university and know that we were still here and things were still operating and going. So the one thing that we truly learned about that is our students wanted to not receive a text message or an email. They wanted to hear a voice of somebody who said, hey, we're still right here. We care about your success here and we're going to be here for you. And now the hard part about this is, and we all love assessment, as VSU is going through our 10-year accreditation, and we all love SAC-COC assessment. And so we truly, Rob was talking about all the different reports that we got out of there and the impact of that. We know that our withdrawal rate was up in the spring, as I think everybody else's were, but we also saw some good academic success on that other side. Anecdotally, we hear stories like Melissa's story about how well it helped her and got her connected and kept her active in her academic classes. And so we hear those anecdotally, but how do we truly dive in to assess that part? We're trying to figure out how to assess the program and how well it worked. It's something that we're going to continue to move on with in the concierge coaching, especially in our online programs. We're just going to continue to do that. So as we figure out how to assess it, maybe that'll be next year's summit presentation when we figure out how to assess it. I covered that well enough for you, Rob?
It's fantastic. And that is actually, Roz, that is the end for us. So I don't know if we're doing Q&A right now or if we're going to save it all for the end, but that's the presentation. That's what we did down here at VSU.
Okay, well, that's great. We did have one question, and I believe that Doria might have responded to, but you might want to also add to it. The question was, with the concierge tracking system, was it already existing at VSU, or did you have to build the interface of that tracking system?
Yeah, so we basically copied the shell of our student success portal. So we did have to create it. There were some integration things that had to happen, but for all practical purposes, it was a pretty light lift because we were basically just cloning some of what we already had inside. That was one of the reasons we were able to get it up so quickly, was that we didn't have to come up with something from scratch. We could kind of borrow from something we already had.
Now, granted, Roz, that's the two IT guys talking about it being a light lift. Now, they may have been behind the scenes coding and doing a lot of stuff. We asked for a pretty quick turnaround and they were able to do it. And so it truly is basically copying a model that we already had that we had built on our own.
Right. Now, what about the coaches? Were they already in the roles, in those roles as it was, or did you had to recruit them? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So I'm going to introduce Dr. Carr on this one. If all of you have not yet gotten an opportunity to meet him, he is what I would say is an excellent negotiator. And so I'm going to let him tell you how he got 300 people from every single division of our university to volunteer to help in this concierge coaching plan.
Well, thank you, Rob. I'll take that. Negotiation is a good thing. We have, there's a story that I tell our parents when they're coming in, and it was one that I ended up relaying to our entire team of faculty and staff here about how our students truly need us to interact with them, and we are a different type of university. And I tell our oldest daughter's story of when she attended here. If you ever want to hear that, you're gonna have to email me or call me. I'll be more than happy to tell you. I won't do it here, but it's a great story, and it talks about how we are different as a university, and that we are here for our students. And truly, when they started saying, "I just don't know what to do," and say, "Hey, we just need you," and the fact that you want to is enough. And then so Rob and his team, although we may have done the negotiation of trying to run around campus and truly drum up support and get that in here, our head football coach, we went to his office, we got him to come on board and do it outside of the football team to do it. We got some of those big names in there. We got the president, Dr. Carvajal, was willing to do it. And so once you start to see those executive team members and the people you see around campus a lot doing it, really and truly, our faculty and staff just rallied around us, and it was truly one of the best moments I've had in my career here at VSU.
Thank you, guys. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. As we began to transition to Atlanta Metropolitan State, we will again welcome Jay Wyatt, Executive Director of Admissions and Student Life, and then Mita Rollins, Director of Faculty and Administrative Services, Atlanta Metropolitan State College.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all see the presentation okay? Roz, are you able to see?
I can see it. I sure can. It's not in presentation mode.
Okay, wonderful. How about now? Is that better?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for your time and your energy this afternoon. I'm going to present along with one of my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Mita Rollins, on some of the ways that we here at Atlanta Metropolitan State College were able to engage both current students and stop out students by way of using care teams throughout the season of the pandemic, and kind of how we approach such a task, being a commuter institution, very small in size, but really wanting to make sure that our students who from special populations were able to stay connected with AMSC kind of through some turbulent times. So in an attempt to make meaningful connections with these students, what we did was we utilized two care teams and one-stop shop approach beginning in the fall of 2020, to make sure that students were aware of resources, particularly those resources that were unique to helping them navigate the COVID-19 pandemic, that they were aware of those resources and that they felt connected with AMSC faculty and staff. Dr. Rollins, did you want to talk about the characteristics of the care teams?
Sure, absolutely.
Our care teams really had a full array of members on the care team. I mean, anyone from students, faculty, staff, and retirees. We were able to kind of lean in on some of our retirees once our president had a call for care teams. We were able to identify those folks that really cared for our AMSC trailblazers and didn't mind to provide that rich outreach, those high touch points for our students, and really make some cold calls that can be daunting for some people. But this group of folks was really motivated. They were excited to really make sure that AMSC was definitely on their minds and that we were caring for them, that we care for them. So that's kind of a little bit about the care team, from students, faculty, staff, retirees, and being able to really dive in and to assist our students when needed. In addition, those care team members, a little bit like Valdosta State, had some training and had to undergo some preparation. And even to this day, we still meet about 8 times in a 15 to 16-week semester to collaborate and share information, right, across functional areas, so that as we're making these calls and trying to connect these students with the resources, the team feels empowered and they feel knowledgeable about areas that they otherwise may not have interacted with prior to being a part of a care team. It's important that it was important for AMSC to really decide what was our message going to be focused around, right? What was the most important types of resources? What things that we need to connect our students to the most? And Dr. Rose will speak in a little bit about some research that took place prior to the care team to help us to kind of hone in on some functional areas or some needs from our students. But what we decided upon was roughly 4 areas of emphasis, which included early alerts, making sure that our students were aware of the laptop learner program that we wanted to really ramp up as we move to virtual learning, promoting our one-stop shop as the first place to go for help and assistance, regardless of what your needs were as a student. And then also just making sure that as we, again, acknowledging that we're a commuter campus, what are any other external or holistic support that our students might need, such as mental health resources? How can we meet their non-academic but holistic and kind of social and environmental based needs as well? So the question is, why care teams? Again, like I mentioned earlier, we had a call from our president. You know, many of us all experienced, some of us experienced some very ghostly campuses where everyone is at home and we couldn't see our trailblazers. So one of the things that we tried to do was more formative assessments. We launched 2 to 3 surveys. We launched one in the spring of 2020, the summer of 2020, and fall of 2020. The first survey really focused in on, you know, the pandemic. Are you able to be connected? Are you having any technology problems? The second survey was more about technology accessibility and mental wellness check-ins for the students. And then ultimately for the fall was geared toward that academic support. What did we find? We found from a collection of those small populations of students in those surveys that 52% of our students indicated that the pandemic had some type of negative impact on their academic performance in their classes. We found that many of our students were still working, either full-time or part-time. But one of the greatest things that we found is students were still responsible for educating at least one child in their household. But a large majority of our students surveyed that they needed additional tutoring support for their online classes. So some of the themes that emerged from our formative assessments and calls is that academic support interventions were needed. We needed more computerized tutoring solutions, more tutoring opportunities for our students to take part in. We noticed that attendance was, again, alarming, whether they were not having connectivity concerns or just not coming to class in those hybrid areas. We also noticed that We needed more student service assistants, ensuring that our one-stop shop groups were ready to assist with that concierge approach to their needs, and then sensitivity to their needs, ensuring that they had some type of connection to the school, that social belonging, that they knew that they were trailblazers. They had a person that they could count on to, if they didn't know the answer, that concierge person, that person would be that support that they needed to link them to resources of the school. We can't say that we did everything right, but what we can say that we tried to be present for our students. We wanted to strive to ensure that they had resources needed, ultimately for them to be successful in their classes and successful during the pandemic. As Dr. J, I think we'll move to the next slide. It tells a little bit more about the student populations. So I think one of the things that's really unique about the care team model at Atlanta Metropolitan State College is that we took this opportunity to not only engage current students, but we tapped into those students who had been absent from attending AMSC for 3 semesters or less than. And we defined that population of students as our stop out. So the total number of students that we engaged through our 2 care teams and our one-stop shop model was roughly 2,300 students. Now, how do we define our current students, or what's the criteria? And what was the criteria for those stop out students that we decided to include in this engagement and this outreach via care teams is as follows. So the current student population, it does assign students to faculty by their academic program. So there should be some linkage, right? Some commonality as far as the person that's reaching out to the students. So we wanted to make sure that there was an academic alignment in terms of who we assign to reach out to students. Students are assigned based on their number of credit hours. This helps us to determine if a student might need a little bit of a more holistic, right, conversation or support versus strictly academic support for our students who are a little bit further along, for our upperclassmen. The current student population does assign dual enrollment students to a designated liaison who's also charged with working with the high school guidance counselors and administration. As we move into the early alert model, that'll make a little bit more sense there. Now, for our stop out students, that population does include students with the last attendance of less than 3 semesters at AMSC. It does not include students who are currently enrolled elsewhere. And so we ran this list through NSLDS to ensure that, or to try to see if those students had picked up enrollment in future terms at other institutions. And if so, they were not included in this population. It does not include students who are on academic dismissal or suspension, and it does not include students who were dismissed previously from AMSC for conduct infractions. However, for those students who have stopped out, and when they stopped out, they were not meeting satisfactory academic progress, we do still want to connect with those students because we know that appeals are an option, and there are some ways to circumvent or to rectify that SAP standing. And so we did include those students on the stop out student within the stop out student population. This group of students that Dr. J is speaking on was a very vulnerable population of students. Not saying that our current students weren't vulnerable as well, but we wanted to ensure in the midst of the pandemic that we did reach back and that we tried to ensure that those students that either stopped out spring 2020, summer 2020, and or fall did have some type of connection to the campus, because it could be that something due to the pandemic has prohibited them from coming back to school. So we wanted to ensure that they knew that the trail, but we care here at Atlanta Metro. As we move into our timeline, we had several initiatives of care teams. In spring 2020, we launched our faculty care teams, which was a signature of an opportunity for our faculty leads to be able to almost do the train the trainer, where they assisted other faculty members when they had to go 100% online. And we also had check-ins on our current students at that time. You know, the connectivity, the accessibility to ensure that they had laptops, they had Wi-Fi, that we provided opportunities to have our campus as a hotspot hub, and that there are any other resources that they needed to be successful in their classes. Then as we moved to the summer, we really found that, okay, now we have students coming on campus more. We wanted to ensure that our one-stop shop, where we have majority of our student support services units, that they were equipped and had the necessary tools to help those students, whether they were calling in on the phone, coming in, and just needed to see a physical person to ensure that indeed the area was safe, but they had the resources needed to be successful. So that team was cross-trained. They also provided outreach over the phones, text blasts, emails to those students to ensure that they had what they needed. And then we moved on to the fall, which was our stop out care team, where we called ourselves reaching back to those that we may have lost along throughout the semester of the initial starting of the pandemic. So we built in some early alert check-ins. We found in the classroom that there was students that just didn't attend. So we ensured that we provided outreach to those students, whether it was by the faculty and also from our advising center, our CAS center. Those advisors had a load of students that they reached out to ensure that there was not a technology concern, or to make sure that they were okay, academic wellness check-in. And so you see the first early alert checkpoint was you missed class. The second checkpoint was, okay, you may have not missed class, but we don't see you logged into your class. Whether it was a hybrid course or fully face-to-face, we were able to see, with the help of our distance education team members, to see if within the last 5 days, what type of activities are going on with our students. We wanted to ensure that we were able to connect with them and respond quickly with any concerns or requests. Our third early alert check-in was that midterm, ensuring that each student had a midterm grade. And Dr. J spoke on our dual enrollment students. That was another indicator that we've communicated with our partners to ensure that their academic performance, that's another indicator to see if everything is okay. Some of the scholarly work that we looked at learning community work, we looked at the student life cycle work. We also looked at the self-efficacy specific to the academic setting, and knowing that work will be predictors of their academic performance and their student retention. So a lot went in to building over the timeline to ensure that we had that we were reactive, but we wanted to be proactive, ensuring that they were successful in their classes. Some of the things that are unique, probably not unique to any of us, but some of the data points or the key performance indicators that we consider when we looked at how can we make this effort hit not only academic achievement or academic success, but how could it also touch on that kind of social and co-curricular success. What are the key performance indicators that let us know that our students are on the right track? And how can we use the work of the care team to measure against these KPIs as we look back at this work at the end of each fall or the end of each spring to assess how well we're doing? So we wanted to identify a few KPIs that we would measure the work of the care team against. And so these charts here, this chart shows fall of 2018, 2019, 2020 in comparison. And the first chart shows that the persistence rate from fall to spring. And so in 2018, 63% of our students persisted persisted from the fall to the spring. And we saw that drop slightly in 2019, but again, increased. We hope, we don't know for sure, but we hope due to the work of the care teams and the ideas of connecting students with faculty and staff this last fall. The second chart represents the percentage of students who are enrolled in at least one learning support course while here at AMSC. And we've seen this fluctuate quite a bit. we're still diving in to learn more about how we dropped significantly from 33% of our students in the fall of 2019 to 11.4 being enrolled in learning support classes. Although we do think that some of the test optional admission standards and the practices that go into not requiring testing for admissions may have had a significant impact on this. But the third thing we want to make sure that we look at and try to measure the work of the care teams against are the number of stop outs. So why are we reaching out to stop outs in the first place? It's in an attempt to re-engage that population and to get them reconnected with AMSC. And so we have seen, which is very optimistic, we have seen promisingly a decline in the percentage of students who are in that stop out population from fall to fall. And so in 2018, roughly 29.9% of students were eligible to attend AMSC, but were not enrolled. That dropped to 27.9%. And then again, finally in fall of 2020 to 23.3%.
So what have we learned? We've learned a lot throughout this entire process. I remember going to, we had a spring break in March, and then the next week it was fully online. I mean, we had to do some things very fast, and we had to learn a lot from our students. We had to lean into each other. And as our colleagues mentioned at that also, I mean, we have been meeting and reaching out, and now it's just second nature. We have really learned and we keep learning ways to try to connect with our students, whether it's communication, it's text blasts, it is through mailers to their home. We've utilized some third-party vendors as well, like for instance, Trellis, where they've helped us with the text blasts and the phone calls. In addition to our coaches, we've leaned in on our faculty members because they have an active audience of students in front of them, and ensuring that they have connection in the classroom as far as, their teachers serving as a coach to them as well, in addition to the coaches on the care team. We also, even though we're dealing with a smaller population of students, it's still important for us to ensure that they have student success, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. And so we continue to track those academic and retention outcomes, and having the support from our cabinet level has been also a joy, because even they will roll up their sleeves and make phone calls as well. And that's what's important, to have that, that campus buy-in, but not only from the leadership of the campus. But we have a lot of next steps left, and a lot of strategies that we've learned along the way, and leaned into other colleagues in the system.
So when we launched the care team, one of the things that I think we was challenging for us as a smaller institution was having the technology and the infrastructure, right, to hold the data, to hold resources for care team members. And so as we're looking forward to next steps and continuing this great work, we want to make sure that we elevate our dashboard. Right now, we utilize a simple shared drive to house our FERPA training resources, to house our operational calendar, to house information on just general nail net payment plans, and kind of a frequently asked questions for the care team members. And so how can we elevate and make that shared drive be kind of the premier point for many of the things that we have learned that are coming up in these phone calls? And that's one of the things that we certainly want to elevate and enhance as we move forward with the work of the care team. One of the themes that emerged out of the work that the care team did in the fall of 2020, particularly the stop out care team, was that financial aid was a barrier. Financial resources and being able to afford to come back to campus, even given our excellent price tag, right? Even given how affordable we are, this was a challenge for many of our students. And so as a group, we're looking at what are some ways that we can be proactive in handling those conversations and mitigating those financial aid complications and barriers for current and stop out students. For example, is it going to be helpful for care team members to know that a student is a SAP student? Is it going to be helpful for a care team member to know, again, those NELNET payment dates and deadlines, so that they can begin to initiate those conversations with students once they once they share that financial aid is a barrier for them, or having the finances to fund their education is a barrier for them. So we want to just make sure that we have a host of great resources, because again, it's a cross-functional team. When you have retirees tapping in, they have to kind of relearn all of the systems all over again. They have no idea sometimes where to go. And so we want to make sure that our shared drive, where we're keeping this information, is thorough, it's accurate, and it allows folks to be able to have those meaningful conversations with students. We also have found a lot of concern from our faculty, particularly with regards to making sure that we're not violating FERPA. So believe it or not, that's come up in a lot of our conversations. As you reach out to a stop out student, how do you verify the identity of that student before you begin to do that deep dive into why you left AMSC and how can we get you to come back to AMSC? And so we've really got to pay some attention to how we are cross-training all members of the care team with regards to compliance, confidentiality, and what things they're sharing with students, and then really when that appropriate handoff is. Our care team is charismatic. They are, if we had an all-star team, a basketball all-star team, these would be the folks that would be wearing the jerseys and playing on our all-star team. So they are really excited about this level of work, and that enthusiasm sometimes comes with opening the door and just running with the phone call. So we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and that we remain, in compliance as we're doing this outreach, particularly to students who have stopped out. So those are some of the next steps and strategies that we hope to employ. And hopefully, if we ever get to have this discussion again, we'll have some data as we approach fall of 2021 with regards to those KPIs that really show us moving favorably with those students who have had an interaction with one of our care teams. I think that concludes our presentation, Dr. Rollins, unless you have any final thoughts or comments to add. I think that concludes our presentation. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to have an opportunity for you all to come back and give us a little bit more. I do have a few questions. The first question is there an opportunity to use any of the tools that you've discussed today in your recruitment process? And then the example is targeting students who have applied and have been accepted, but haven't completed certain tasks in order to successfully enroll, such as attending orientation, completing their FAFSA, and then also contacting potential candidates who haven't applied and or who have expressed interest with AMSC in their high school, and they've agreed to some kind of contact. So really just trying to see how this model is actually helping you on the recruitment end.
I can speak a little bit to that. Beginning in fall of 2020, AMSC really took a hard look, and we had to, right? We had to assess our performance and our numbers up against the previous fall when we're looking at how to navigate COVID and what could we do? What populations of students could we tap into? Since for us, we really lost what was successful in terms of applications, which was going into the high schools, hosting a series of application days. We lost that. And that really helped us with our enrollment funnel have a really nice number of applicants to start, prospects to start recruiting or converting. And so one of the things that we did, we identified right away, once we identified that challenge, was dipping back into previous applications, right? And moving those applications through the funnel for an enrollment for fall. And so it's a little bit like what we're doing with the care team, and the stop out care team, if you think about it, is an enrollment tactic. We're basically saying to a student who left us 2 semesters ago, if you're not enrolled anywhere else, how can we help you reconnect with AMSC? We want you to finish what you started. We want you here. So it really is almost another recruitment or admissions counselor model. So to answer, I think part of the question, we do, as a regular practice, for incomplete applications from past semesters, we do continue contact with that student. We need you to tell us, I am not interested, and so that for me is as good as gold, but that's a no thank you. And so we do tend to work many of our leads across multiple semesters with the hopes for getting an enrollment. And I will say that although, we are a small institution, for fall, our enrollment for new students and new transfer students was up 9.3%. So we saw 9.3% more new freshmen and new transfer students in the fall of 2020 than we had compared to fall of 2019. So we like to think that there's some success in it, although we're still measuring.
And I heard you mention that the faculty were part of the early alert checkpoints. Can you talk a little bit about how do the care teams differ from semester to semester? Because it looks like you had one kind of focus in the, the spring, then the summer, then the fall. Were these the same or different team members? And what's the makeup of that, the team, the care teams?
That's an excellent question. There was different teams. So the faculty care team that was launched in March was a group of faculty members that identified themselves as wanting to help. The first part of that, Roz, was faculty leads helping faculty, right? So we had a faculty lead per school that reached out to their colleagues to say, how can I help? If it was, I need help getting in the learning management system, I'm having difficulty reaching one of my students, I'm having difficulties getting on teams, those faculty leads served as ambassadors to their colleagues. Then we also had a group of faculty members that provided outreach in those first year experience classes, some key courses that we identified that students would need some extra TLC. Now, when you look at our stop out care team, that is a different group. Now, were there some blend over? Yes, some blend overs was Dr. J, myself, a few of the other staffers that kind of was on each of the teams, kind of due to some of the leadership and the guiding. But our stop out care team was a unique group of students, faculty, staff, and retirees that was different from the faculty care team that provided outreach to those stop outs. That was a very good question. And so we kind of, to me, it was more of an adaptive. We tried to adapt it different. We saw different population of students that we needed to jump on, another group after surveys and coming to the table to see what else is needed, to see how we could be a better service to the students.
And all three care teams are still in action. So you might very well be serving right now in spring of 2021 on two care teams. It's very likely. I'm on two care teams right now. And so they all run concurrent to each other with their specified student population. Because of the number of staff that we have, you might very well be on both. I'm proud to report that 33% of our faculty and staff are assigned to one or more of our care teams.
Okay, sounds like you all are running a tight ship like Dr. Carr. And that's great. I thank you. I haven't seen any other questions. So as we are transitioning, we want to thank Atlanta Metro State College for talking about their care teams process. And as we're closing out, our last session, last group with us will be our colleagues from the University of West Georgia, John Preston, who's the provost and VPAA, and then Andre Fortune, who is the VPSA and over enrollment management. So we look forward to hearing from this team. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be with you, and thank you for your time. I think the third session, or third talk in this session perfectly kind of combines some elements from Atlanta Metro as well as Valdosta and the concierge service as well as the one-stop shop. So I'm John Preston. I'm the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs here at the University of West Georgia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Andre Fortune, and I have the pleasure of serving as Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. So as we talk about the Momentum Center and our momentum approach today for the Momentum Summit, we think this image here, this meme, adequately represents what we're about to talk about. And for those of you that do have your cameras on and I can see your face, I can see that this resonates with far too many people. The fact that, whether it's back in your day or on your current campus, we send students from building to building and floor to floor. Again, as Dr. Preston said, and I've heard throughout this summit, the imagery and the consistency by which we talk about concierge service is certainly a big part of our momentum approach and our momentum center.
So to give you a bit of background, so West Georgia, by the numbers, we are a university with just about 13,500 400 students. The increase that we've seen in the last year has been pretty impressive, with 1.4% increase. Our graduate numbers constitute a significant portion of our enrollment and have grown significantly in the last 5 years. So we've added about 50% of our graduate students in the last year. And retention has been a big focus. Obviously, with our Momentum initiative as part of the university system, the focus has been on really not only gaining additional students, but also retaining those students that we have. And the Momentum Center is a representation of that, really a one-stop shop where students can come and get the help that they need. And as a growing institution, as a university that is focused on retaining our students and better serving them, it's really important that we do everything we can for each one of these students. Every one of them is significant, and we want to retain them. So similar to the two presentations that you've seen already in this afternoon session, the key is really what can we do better to meet those students' needs where they are.
So for us, one of the ways that we want to do that is through the physical representation of our Momentum Center. So we've taken on the motto of any question, any need, send it to the Momentum Center. Again, there's the word again, concierge service. We are making sure that we own the issue. We are helping students not only in that first year gain momentum, but momentum from first year all the way through graduation, whether they're an undergraduate student or a graduate student. And while the Momentum Center itself is a physical manifestation of this concierge first stop, one-stop shop type of place, this is also for us not just about bouncing students around physically, but also in other modes. And so we want to make sure that we all take ownership of a student's issue. Ideally, we can get a student into the Momentum Center and they can have, and you'll see this here pretty soon in terms of who resides in the Momentum Center and what questions they typically get and how they answer those questions and work together as a team, so that, again, we point you back to that meme. You are not bouncing a student all over campus to try to get answers to really complex questions. But we also want to take the approach of whether it's a phone call or an email, that the student is not forwarded. The student is not bounced around. The email is forwarded or the phone call is bounced around until we get the answer that the student needs, unless we get absolutely to a point where we absolutely need to transfer a student or their parent or a guardian. Otherwise, we own the problem, we own the issue, so that, you know, navigating higher education, as many of us know, is not an easy thing. And for many of us who are higher education professionals, we know how to navigate this, or any university system a lot better than many of our students, particularly those who are first in their family to go to college and sometimes don't know what they don't know, or don't know what questions to ask, or exactly what a bursar is, which is why we changed the name of our bursar, so that it's clear to students exactly what each of these functions do. So without any further ado, we'll share with you who is actually in the Momentum Center.
All right, so as these pictures are showing, we've got a new physical space that we opened up. And yes, we do have hand sanitizer and all social distancing going on there. So one might say in 2020, 2021, physical spaces are being transformed and look very different. What's also nice about our Momentum approach is it's not just the physical space, although we do have that on campus and can direct students there. We also have that virtual presence, so students can chat, have a phone call, and we'll take care of them. But it starts with this idea that students are expected. So you're seeing as you walk into the front of this new Momentum Center, it's a very welcoming, inviting space. What you're not seeing off camera is some seating that we hope post-COVID will be more active and a lively, active space. But you walk in and it's very much like a hotel lobby. We are expecting you when you arrive, and we're glad that you're there and we're taking care of you. We have a number of different offices that still have their presence across campus, but we bring representatives into the Momentum Center and make sure that we have those services also available right there for students to access. So we have Enrollment Services that can answer questions. We've got advisors. that you can go into the office and have a one-on-one conversation, getting academic advising. We've got financial aid and asking questions. As Dr. Fortune mentioned, we all swim. We're like the fish in water. We swim in higher education every day, but we need to also remember that many of our students are coming on a campus and trying to navigate this often very complicated system, and don't, they have the best intentions. They're looking to pay their bill, but they don't necessarily know how to do that. We want to remove any of that friction and make sure that the only thing that should be tough on the student should be what we're doing in that classroom. And that should be the challenging bit. The services and making sure that you've got your bill paid and that you've got the right classes, that should be as easy as possible. We've got a payment specialist and a billing center, so you can go right there and you can make sure that everything is taken care of and that you've got a zero balance before you leave the building. And we also have career services. It's not just what's happening while you're a student. We're looking to propel the students into their careers and make sure that we're providing those career services to them as well. Ultimately, in all of these different areas of campus life that we're bringing centrally and providing physically to the students, the standard is service excellence, that we want them to have, as Dr. Carr mentioned, a concierge experience, that the students are getting everything they need. As Dr. Fortune mentioned, they're not being bounced around. And when they walk into the building or when they start a chat session, we're going to take care of that problem for them. We're going to solve that, and we're not going to stop until we do. So very important to focus on the students are welcome, they're expected, we're glad that they're there, rather than treating this as a problem. We're looking to remove barriers for students and make sure that they can get back to the task of learning.
As part of our momentum approach, and particularly from a service excellence standpoint, I shared a story with my team about one of my experiences moving here to Georgia just last year and joining this team and needing to transfer my car insurance. And I remember calling, and it's a nationally known company, and I called the company, and the agent here in Georgia said, "I'm sorry, you have to call the other state to get your insurance transferred. I can't do that for you here." And she said, "Would you like me to transfer you?" And I said, "That would be great, because otherwise I'd have to look up the number, and if you know it and you can find it, please help." Well, as she proceeded to transfer me, I got ready to retell my story to the agent in the other state. And the agent here in Georgia stepped right in and said, "I have Mr. Fortune here on the line. He has this policy. Here's his number. Here's what he's trying to do. Here's the coverage he's going to have. Do you need anything else from me?" And the other agent in the other state said, "Nope, we got it taken care of." "Mr. Fortune, do you need anything else?" "Nope, we got it taken care of." How often does that happen for us when it comes to reaching out to other service providers? Most of the time, how often do we get transferred around? How often do we have to tell our story over and over and over, and how frustrating that is? That's part of the service excellence. That's part of owning the problem. So focusing on student success and serving them in the best way possible. We use stories like those to help our team understand exactly what it means to not just have a first-year momentum approach, but to really embrace the University System of Georgia's momentum year initiatives across the student life cycle. So again, not just in that first year, but all throughout, whether you're undergraduate or graduate. We're continually looking at everything that they're doing and utilizing data to help us do early outreach and work with our faculty. And when possible, we want to affirm success. So today we've talked a lot about interventions and intervening and stepping in when they have challenges. And certainly we want to do that, but we also want to celebrate when they are being successful. And we have some tools and some software that we're using and individuals that reach out to our students to do that. Ultimately, on whether you're a mid-size or large or even a smaller campus, it is difficult for many of our instructors to know exactly how to navigate the university, just like our students. And so the Momentum Center has become that single place for our employees, for our faculty and staff to refer students so that they can get assistance. In fact, just the other day, someone said, "I have, ants in my residence hall. I don't know exactly what to do." They went to the Momentum Center and we helped them. We got them connected with housing because, the way that the housing model was set up, they weren't sure. Do I call housing? Do I call facilities? The Momentum Center took ownership of that problem and figured it out instead of pointing the student one way or the other. In some cases, we cannot answer the question in the Momentum Center, and we have to utilize outside resources, other resources external to that facility. And when we can, and excuse me, when we need to do that, then again, we go back to that concierge level of service, whether that is walking students or walking alongside students, again, not making them restate and retell their story. When they arrive to that housing office, that what we call Blue Coat, which are our ambassadors, our campus ambassadors, they are responsible for taking the ownership and sharing back the student's experience and what's going on, what the issue is. And then of course the student can supplement and add to that. In the coming weeks, we are really excited. We'll be able to do this via golf cart and be able to take students around campus so that we're not just walking them to places, or again, we're getting away from the old, here's a campus map, or pull out the map on your phone and point to it. We want to give the best experience we possibly can. And with this approach, we expect our students will do better in their courses. They're going to have much more academic success. One of the things that is a big area of focus for us, which Dr. Preston is going to talk about, is student success and retention. As we talk about, again, we started with a meme talking about back in the day. Far too many of us probably remember back in our day where you showed up in, whether it be orientation or convocation, where someone stood at a podium and looked out into the audience and said, look to your left, now look to your right. One of you won't be here next year. And they stuck out their chest with pride as if that was something to be excited about as an institutional leader. That is no longer acceptable. We are trying to make sure every single student is successful at every single level, at every path of the way.
So yeah, speaking of student success, this idea of retention, right? That we started off with a slide that talked about our retention numbers and the ability to move that up significantly. A greater than 5% improvement in retention from 1 year really came from people getting on phones, calling students and letting them know you're eligible to register. And again, we're that fish in water. We know that student is able to register and sign up for classes. They might not be thinking like that. This might be all new to them. And so having a place virtually that we can refer all students to, having a place physically that students can come and get the help that they need, we're taking that ownership. And our top priority is that retention and that success of students. It's not only the recruitment, but then keeping them here. And every one of the students that we admit to the University of West Georgia, we believe can cross that stage at graduation and turn that tassel. And we're looking forward to celebrating with them. We tell them that often. And so we want students to be competitive, and we want to enable them and set them up for success, not just at the institution, but also later in life. So that gets back to some of those services that we're providing in career services. So also we've got a number of interactions that we have with students, either right before or after class or coming by office hours, where they're experiencing a challenge. And prior to this momentum approach, faculty might refer a student and say, well, here's an office that you might get help. But we had no way of actually verifying that they got the help that they needed. Now, since we're not leaving their side until they're in the right spot, or we're initiating a chat function on a faculty's cell phone or on their computer, we can verify when that student gets connected and make sure that they're not lost and get distracted by something from one place across the campus. So Dr. Fortune mentioned the golf carts and really just trying to get people to where they need as quickly as possible. It's all about a mindset of putting that student at the center of our universe. And really, this is essential to retention. There could be a real small thing that trips a student up, and that's just going to take them further away from the academic success and focus their attention on this other thing rather than studying and getting ready for that next test or that next project. So having a very quick resolution, even so far as to driving them across campus in a golf cart, is going to make a huge difference in letting those students know that we value them and we want them here. And they have a place at the University of West Georgia. It's going to make a huge difference in retaining a student when we let them know. And I'd say that everyone on this call probably could point back to someone, whether it was a faculty person or a staff person, in their experience that made a difference, that you might have been on the edge of saying, can I make this? Can I do this? And someone instilled in you that yes, you can, and we want you here. We expect you here, and you're valued. And so this Momentum Center is really an embodiment of that mindset, that we want faculty, we want students to be here. We want faculty and our staff to be engaged in the success of our students. And every one of them is valued, and they have a place at this institution.
And finally, before we start to take questions, the Momentum Center is, again, a physical manifestation of the UWG that we are becoming. The university's new strategic plan, which we unveiled this past February, shows that we are focused on our bullseye. And I have a little graphic here, but feel free to check it out online at our Becoming UWG website. Right in the center of that bullseye is student success. Everything we do is focused on helping students get here, progress through, and again, get the momentum to progress through, launch their career for life after UWG. And one of the big pieces, I mean, when you think about and you hear us talk about competitiveness and placemaking, and especially relevance as it relates to the Momentum Center, one of the things that Dr. Preston mentioned earlier, some of you might already be thinking about as we talk through each of the offices that are present in the Momentum Center. You may be thinking, well, are those people busy at all times of the year, or are they busy at peak times of, the semester or the year? And the answer is yes and yes. And so we built the Momentum Center even during the global pandemic. We were able to convert what used to be our old health center into the Momentum Center, which is centrally located in our Carrollton campus and is an outstanding facility, as you can see through some of the photos. But when it comes to relevance, we've built in flex space. We've built in places where if we need different resources from across campus at different times of the year, we can bring them in. And one of the things that we are looking at is this is an evolving process. So there are offices that perhaps we don't even know yet that we need until our students and their foot traffic tells us, this is an office that would make it more convenient for them to be in this space. This is the 5th university I've had the pleasure of working at, and this is the first one I've seen take this type of approach to student success and student services. Most campuses will have a one building that's maybe focused on administration and or student success. And even still, again, I point back to that first meme we showed you all, where even if it's in the same building, you're still sending the student either up and down the stairs or up and down the elevator and across the hall and then back to where they started. And it's frustrating. This building is circular, one level, and all of the offices are all there. And any office that, again, is not present, we own the problem. We go out and try to solve the issue for our students.
So that is our content. Hopefully that is inspiring to you to, I think if we counted, we probably mentioned the word student 100 times in the last 20 minutes. That's what this Momentum Summit is all about. That's what this session is about. It's connecting with students. And we're really happy and thankful for your time and allowing us to share what we're doing at the University of West Georgia in our Momentum Center. Happy to take any questions that you have, or if you've got comments on what you all are doing in your institutions that we can learn from.
Great. That's actually awesome. Go West. We have a couple of things here. One of the questions here is, have you had a chance to review the types of questions or issues that the students have been raising at the Momentum Center? For instance, are you seeing mostly financial aid or bursar type questions, or is it fairly evenly distributed in terms of the kinds of concerns the students are bringing to the table?
Yes, so the time of year, like I'd imagine on most of your campuses, will dictate what are the top 5 concerns or issues or questions. And so we keep track of this on a daily and weekly basis. But for me personally, I get a monthly report that we're looking at. And so now we're trying to reverse engineer and look back and say, okay, if these are the types of questions we typically get on this time of year, and these are the top 5 questions, whether they're coming into the Momentum Center, and our Momentum Center is also an extension of our call center, which they answer the phone for a number of different offices on campus, like financial aid and student accounts and billing, the registrar, and many others. And so we can keep track of exactly which line the numbers are coming in on, as well as the questions that are being asked. And so that will help us understand, or at least we hope help us better understand, how to maybe more effectively communicate to students. I think one of the first presenters talked about We can't use text messaging too much, and certainly email does not work as effectively as it used to. And so we have to be very strategic about how we communicate, when we communicate. And so those are the types of things that we're starting to assess. We're also assessing walk-in traffic. So we do a weekly report of exactly who's coming in. We also take a look at whether or not we get the first issue or first contact resolution. So we are identifying, were we able to resolve the problem in the Momentum Center, or did we have to escort them to a different place on campus, or did we tell them we needed more time and had to do some research and get back to them? So we are taking track or keeping track of a lot of different data points to try to improve the service and make it a better experience for our students.
Okay, great. There was a comment here, which I think also kind of leads to just some question for you guys. There has been a thread today and yesterday in terms of the mindset of the students, as well as how important it is for that mindset to be within faculty and staff. Can you talk a little bit about how the faculty and staff may have been kind of buying into understanding this as a mindset in terms of the way that they are providing this excellent service to students?
Yeah, absolutely. It's changing a culture, and there's two levels to that. One is to raise awareness that this Momentum Center and the call center is a resource to faculty and staff to refer students to. So that's been a big push, and make sure that everyone understands that this is something that we have available. Rather than referring the student to a particular office, the Momentum Center is the place. And once the student is connected there, then they're going to get everything that they need. So that's been a campaign across the university to make sure that people are aware of this. And then absolutely, to your point, that mindset is key, that we need to own the problem. And that is something that if we go back to this kind of last slide right before the Q&A, it's this concept of becoming. We've never arrived. We're always getting better at this. And the approach that we're taking today is better than the approach we took yesterday, but it's not as good as the approach we're going to be taking tomorrow. And instilling that awareness that we need to take ownership. It's we are the service providers to the students, and we need to own whatever the problem is, even if it's self-inflicted, right? And sometimes it is, but it goes back to that retention. We could say, well, it's on the student and they didn't do X, Y, or Z, but in reality, as Dr. Fortune just mentioned, oftentimes we need to have a time machine and kind of rewind and say, what were we doing 4 weeks ago that would have helped the student avoid that problem that they're experiencing right now? And if we take that approach and we really assume that ownership, no matter what the issue is, then hopefully it will, number one, convey to the student that we're invested in their success, and it begins and ends with them and their success. But two, it will also hopefully help us address the problems proactively. Rather than dealing with something today, what can we do to improve our process and this kind of becoming that you're seeing there, so that we're in continuous improvement. And looking at the reports that we get on a monthly basis is a great example of that. What are the concerns that students are coming to? And then what is that going to look like next semester? How can we position our messaging and give them the resources they need more proactively, so that we're not seeing those same problems across the campus like we were a year ago, a semester ago?
Okay.
I really want to just really quickly just piggyback on that first question and answer, because I think it's critical with both of us being new to the university and really helping redefine what service excellence is. And so in the way that we just gave some of those examples, I remember working with a colleague that received an email that did not, was outside the scope of her office, and she forwarded it on to the appropriate office, or actually gave the student the right information of, here's who you talk to. Well, then the student talked to that person and they said, actually, it's not my department, it's this department. And then that department said, actually, it's not, and I'm walking this through to the student, or excuse me, to the employee, to say how that's not acceptable. And they're like, well, but I answered it within 2 hours. Like, that used to be our standard, is that we got back to students in a quick and timely manner, and I gave them the right information and I didn't make it up. And I'm like, those are all just now kind of more baseline given. We need to go a step further and truly own the problem. So you reach out to that department and get the answer for the student, and then let them send you to the next 2 departments until you come back to the student and say, now I found your answer. and or, hey, I have the contact for you, and I'm sure that this is the person who is going to be able to help you. That's going back to that service excellence and, again, owning the issue.
That's right. And it definitely speaks to how the concept of mindset. And as you all were talking about becoming, there is a question here about, are there other areas or departments that West Georgia is looking at to create this kind of similar synergy the way that the Momentum Center has created? Is this something that, is this in the air and you're kind of spreading it across, or is it just something that's directly associated with the students right now?
Definitely. So this focus, you probably maybe picked up on a lot of our Momentum Center approach, and a momentum approach is about current students. It's about retention, progression, graduation. We are taking some of these same mindsets and looking at it from a recruitment perspective. How do we help a prospective student navigate the university? Again, most of us, I'd imagine, probably have calendars and drip campaigns and different ways that we reach out to people based on different places that they're at in the funnel. Well, we're going to throw out some of those or either add to it and say, how do we provide this concierge level one-on-one approach to supporting students to help them be able to make a better decision? And sometimes we know that, helping them through that process means they may not choose us as an institution, but at the end of the day, we're helping advance higher education and helping support all of our students who are on this call.
Well, I can see this is a significant investment. How long has the Momentum Center been open, and how do you get the word out to the students? I mean, if they're not reading the emails, and of course I know they can't miss that round building, but what is it that's encouraging them to come by, and how long has the center been open?
We did the ribbon cutting a month ago, and this has been an initiative that's been going for about a year, right? So looking at how can we really centralize and give the students a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an ongoing process, right? We're wanting more and more traffic. Understandably, with COVID, most of the traffic we're seeing is virtual and online. And we look to, like all of you on this call, we're looking for more students on our campuses in the near future, and we expect this to be a vibrant hub on campus.
Okay, well, this was great. I love the service excellence stories, and obviously I need to switch insurance company. No one in my insurance company will ever do any of that for me. I want to, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I want our services. This has been a great presentation. We've learned so much about what is being offered out there from Valdosta State, Atlanta Metropolitan State, as well as University of West Georgia. And we just know that there's some great things going on. And this is an opportunity for us to highlight all of our campuses. If you have colleagues who do not get a chance to see this, remind them that they can see this on Facebook Live. And we are just appreciative of your participation. And remember, we've got 3 more days to go. Thank you, everyone. You get back 2 minutes to your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.